There is a specific type of person who is, on paper, a millennial, but reads everything written about that generation and quietly thinks, this isn't quite me. Not wrong, just slightly off. The way a description can be technically accurate, yet still miss what actually mattered. If that feeling has followed you for a while without a name, this is where it came from. Most generational research works in broad windows. Boomers, Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z. Each one spans roughly 15 to 20 years, wide enough to build a stereotype around, wide enough to sell a book. People born between 1981 and 1986 fall into a 5-year window at the front edge of the millennial category. Too early to share the defining experiences of the generation they're grouped with, too late to belong to the one before it. Not quite one thing, not quite the other. A group that most generational research simply steps over. When researchers describe millennials, they're usually referring to people born around 1990. People who grew up with social media during their teenage years, entered the workforce after the worst of the 2008 recession, and formed their identities in a digital world that was already fully built. That's a different biography, and it produced a different psychology. People born between 1981 and 1986 are not that person. Almost no research has been written about who they actually are. What there is research on is what happened to them, and the timing of it is specific enough to be almost cruel. Think about what it actually meant to make a mistake before any of it was recorded. You said something embarrassing at a party, and it lived in 3 people's memories until it didn't. You went through a phase, the wrong clothes, the wrong crowd, the version of yourself you'd be horrified to see documented. And it dissolved. Not because you deleted it, because nothing was there to keep it sharp. When you grow up in a world that isn't watching you, when your sense of self forms without an audience, something different happens. You develop a private version of who you are that exists before anyone else's opinion of you. Not a curated version, just a self, built quietly, mostly in private. People born after 1990 built their identities in public, already being responded to, already shaped by feedback. The self that emerged as a performance. You were the last group whose mistakes could simply become the past. No archive, no receipts. Just time doing what time is supposed to do. That freedom had a price tag. It just took a few years to arrive. You finished your degree and entered the workforce between 2003 and 2008. The window mattered more than anyone anticipated. The dot-com collapse had peaked in 2001. By the time most of this group graduated, the crash was over. But the market hadn't come back. The jobs weren't there. And the ones that were paid less than what the previous generation had earned at the same stage. Economists call this the scarring effect. Entering a weak market early leaves a mark that doesn't disappear when things improve, quietly shaping the way risk feels in the body for years. You probably didn't call it that at the time. You just called it Tuesday. You built anyway. And by 2007, something that looked like a career was beginning to take shape. And then 2008 happened. Not at the start. To you 3, 4, 5 years in, with momentum that had taken years to build. By 2016, households headed by someone born in the early 1980s held 41% less wealth than households the same age had held in 1989, the largest gap of its kind ever recorded. Gen X had a decade of footing before 2001. Younger millennials built their lives in the recovery after 2008. This group got hit by both, and none of that made it into the standard millennial story. And the cost of that silence showed up somewhere else entirely. But there's a part of this that almost nobody talks about, and it has nothing to do with money. In 2019, a single article about millennial burnout reached 8 million readers in 2 weeks. Not because it was shocking, but because it named something people had been carrying without a word for it. This generation hadn't just experienced burnout, They'd internalized it as a baseline. But what's specific to this older cohort isn't the exhaustion. It's what happens the moment they stop. Guilt. Not tiredness, not laziness. The feeling that stopping is something you haven't earned yet. That somewhere, something is falling behind because you are not moving. Younger millennials don't carry this the same way. They don't have a before to measure against. The always-on world is simply the world they know. You did. Which means you know, from lived experience, that it's possible to exist without being productive. And you can no longer get there. That distance is its own particular kind of loss. One that nobody counted. Which brings up the part that's hardest to talk about. Because it happens in rooms, not in recessions. Here's something that rarely gets said out loud. In most rooms, you end up being the person who translates. The Gen X manager talks about loyalty, paying your dues. The younger colleague wants speed, meaning in the work. Neither speaks the other's language fluently enough. And you, almost without deciding to, become the one who bridges the gap. You grew up in one world and learned to function in another. You speak both languages. That's useful. It's also exhausting in a way that's hard to explain to people who only know one. There's a name for this: emotional labor. The invisible work of keeping yourself regulated so everyone around you can stay comfortable. People who do this habitually stop noticing they're doing it. It stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like just who you are. No study has measured the cost of understanding everyone in the room while being fully understood by almost no one. No research tracks the weight of spending decades as the one in the middle, without anyone asking whether you wanted that role. The absence of that research is not a gap. It's a pattern. The same pattern that left this group unnamed for 40 years. So come back to that millennial narrative for a second. The generation that came of age online, built their identity through social media, and entered the workforce after the worst of 2008 had already passed. That story is real, just not this one. The label fit them. It never quite fit you. And the fact that no one noticed the difference for this long is itself part of the story. None of what this group carried made it into the research. None of it made it into the cultural narrative. Not because it wasn't real, but no one was looking at this specific 5-year window carefully enough to see it. If something in this felt like recognition, not flattery, not nostalgia, but the precise feeling of something being accurately named for the first time, hold on to that, because that feeling is data. It means the experience was real, even when no one was measuring it. The standard narrative was never really about you, but the experience was real. And it was always going to surface, one way or another. The question worth sitting with isn't what this generation should have done differently. The structures were real. The timing was real. The cost was real. But here's what I keep coming back to. If someone had named this for you 10 years ago, what would have changed? Leave it in the comments. And if you know someone who's been carrying this without a name for it, this might be the video to send them.